All right, everyone. Hello. How you doing? Welcome to the HockeyBuzzcast. Before we get started, we're waiting for Russ to join us as well. Mike's up in Toronto, and just about an hour ago there was a white van that came up on the sidewalk and hit a bunch of people and injured them in Toronto. We hope everybody's okay. It's not too far away from Mike. It's pretty. I guess it's not really close to you either, right?
No, it was apparently uptown on Yonge Street, so I haven't heard many details other than it's just sort of spreading like wildfire. A bunch of friends of mine are like, "Are you in Toronto? Are you okay?" I'm like,
Oh yeah,
"It's a city. It's a city of 10 million. I think I'm okay."
no.
Yeah, but
We really hope that everyone's all right up there. We know there's a lot of Leaf
yes.
fans that are out and about tonight and out and about today, probably heading down to get their spots on the outdoor area.
Oh,
Probably people already sitting outside waiting to watch tonight, I imagine.
yeah, I see a lot of people walking around with Leaf jerseys. I actually I went to lunch with a reporter friend of mine at the sports bar right near Maple Leaf Square, and they're getting prepared for like 3 or 4 thousand people to be just jumping all over each other. But it'll depend on the result of the game. If it's a negative result, it'll empty out like a like a horror flick.
Yeah,
But
yeah. Well, we just really hope everybody's okay with that, and hopefully, nothing further comes from it. And I'm sure security will be tight, but it already is tight down there. I'm sure it'll be even tighter now because of what's going on. They don't even know what the cause of this is yet, so we're not going to speculate, but we'll see. Anyway, I think we should just start honestly because we have so much to get into.
mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Let's just start the show, okay? Here we go. Hello, Hockey World. It's Monday, April 23rd, 2018.
I'm Michael Agello on location in an unspecified place.
I'm Peter Tessier in very balmy Winnipeg.
And I'm Eklund. You're watching the Hockey Buzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com in what is amazingly beautiful Pennsylvania today. We are the podcast, of course, that comes every Monday through Friday at this time to fill you in on the comings and goings in the hockey world. And we have some goings today to talk about in terms of teams, in terms of management.
And some comings.
And yes, and some comings, and we'll see what happens next. We also, and Mike, at some point we have to tell people where you are. It'd be fun to have you'd have your own little live crowd there watching you.
No, that's what I'm trying to avoid. I can't sign autographs while I'm doing the Buzzcast.
I know. I know you saw plenty of them though in the rest of your daily.
Oh yes, no doubt.
You do get approached, and Mike's a very approachable guy. So feel free to go up to Mike and ask him all about his life when you see him.
Yeah, no, I get approached by the police saying, "What are you doing here?" And why? Never mind.
Yeah, you're right, Brecklin. You're not allowed in the country. Get out of here. Anyway, all right. So let's first talk about the teams that are gone since we last talked, because we have quite a few of them. I'm trying to think who has gone since we last talked, but
Minnesota and Philadelphia, obviously. And
let's start with Minnesota because until Russ gets here a little bit. The Wild, the Jets take them out at home in demanding fashion. I mean, really just a no doubt about it type elimination game, Peter.
Yeah, it was. Winnipeg was absolute pandemonium before the game. They had as many people outside. Actually, they had probably 10,000 more outside than was in the arena. And it was, this city had come alive. They've now expanded this whiteout street party, and they're believed that they're going to move it and take out Portage Avenue, which is 3 lanes in either direction, right outside the MTS Center, and start making this a huge spectacle. No, that's the fun part. The game part was an interesting thing because I don't think anyone saw the Jets opening the scoring 31 seconds in. And what started to emerge in that game, and the narrative that you were seeing from the commentators, at least on Sportsnet, was that the Wild, when Devin Dubnyk got pulled, that the players were giving him a pat on the back and letting him know, like, this isn't on you. And I can't go that far. I don't think Dubnyk should have let in that Trouba goal. I think that was a very iffy goal to let in. Trouba was in, he was wide on the high slot, and he put it low under a pad to the far post.
Yeah.
Not a great angle. The goal that Brian Little tipped, again, another weird goal, but again, Dubnyk was so far out of the crease, like he was going to play a shot that was going to go wide, had a little not got a stick out. I don't. This is the thing with Dubnyk that I think Wild fans probably understand better, and they struggle with. When he's on, he's unstoppable. But when when his head isn't there, yikes, it gets a little bit crazy. And unfortunately for the Wild, it got a little bit crazy on Friday. I think Devin probably wants 2 goals back, maybe more, but I don't necessarily know that it's on the players in front. They didn't do a great job. There were some things they missed, but we all you say this, you can call it what you want. Timely saves, a good save, a save at the right time, whatever you want to do it. They weren't there for the Wild when they needed it on Friday night, and that was sort of the undoing. And that was a bit like last night for Colorado too.
Yeah, but I can't. I mean, all your points are valid, Peter, but I can't blame Dubnyk. I mean, first of all, they were without Parise, they were without Suter. Apparently, one of the other Spurgeon was playing on one leg or one shoulder. I mean, I know they don't remember the particular injury.
No, it's his Achilles.
Yeah, so I mean, so you're talking about that means Koivu, Granlund, and Stahl really have to pick it up offensively. And against a team that was just an offensive powerhouse like Winnipeg, I mean, I can't really. I mean, actually, I think Minnesota did better than I thought with all the injuries that they had. So Dubnyk would have had to have been like Carey Price-like for them to even carry the series further.
Maybe I'm overestimating sort of what it is. I don't fault him for the loss. I just think he didn't bring his A game either. I don't think it's all on the players in front of him.
Right.
And look, in a normal game, you go back to game 4 where the Jets won 2-0. I mean, they put everything at Connor Hellebuck he could. And Dubnyk, I mean, yes, he gave up 2 goals, but you know what? You should be able to win sometimes when you give up 2 goals or when you have 2 goals scored on you. And the offense for the Minnesota Wild went AWOL.
Right, but that's the thing. If you have no offense and your defense isn't there, goalies can't win it for you anymore. No, it's not this kind of league anymore.
No, it really isn't. Clearly in this series, I thought, and I thought that but I thought the Jets, though, the good thing for the Jets fans and the Jets in general was all the ghosts hanging over of never winning a playoff series. I thought that Game 5 had the potential if Minnesota gets a goal early or something like that, had the potential of everything getting nerve-wracking, right?
Oh yeah.
That couldn't happen. I mean, so it's not. There's no better feeling if you're a Jets fan than seeing the way that team comes out and just storms on them. And the fact that, I mean, how many people live in the city of Winnipeg? Peter?
So in the city proper, there's just over 700,000.
Right. So you're looking at what, 50,000 around the arena between inside and outside,
give or take, like outside the arena, about 20,000.
Right, and inside another 20,000. So
another 15.
15. Okay, yeah. So 30. I mean, that's incredible when you think about it. I mean, that percentage is unbelievable. Yeah. I mean, it really is. I mean, remember, a lot of these people who live are very old. They're very small. They're little kids. I mean, you're talking about the people who would go to this thing in the ages of your 20 to 60-year-old or 50-year-old people. I mean, you're probably talking about 20% of the people that there are right there.
Absolutely,
and that's
unreal.
I love when they do that, and I love the fact that I mean, I know Russ and I were in Pittsburgh one time during the Stanley Cup Finals where they took away the screen, and it was a big deal. And I wrote articles about it. There were protests about it because you couldn't watch it outside because they wanted people to watch it at bars, and they blamed the NHL and they blamed the Pittsburgh. And it was the funniest thing because I wrote these things, and I thought the Penguins people would be all go back, try this sort of thing. The Penguins people got mad at me for writing this. That the Penguins media people got upset with me for kind of inciting people to say we should be allowed to watch the game outside but what that does outside, is that outside thing. If you've never gone to one of these, you definitely need to wherever wherever you live, because it's such a different environment to watching it at home. I mean, there's a place called the Poorhouse, which is a restaurant here near me. And my wife and I on the last 2 Friday nights, two Friday nights ago, we went there to watch the Flyers game against Pittsburgh that they won in Pittsburgh. And then we went this Friday night to watch Game 5 and they won in Pittsburgh. And we saw all the same people because everyone was superstitious because they went to the Poorhouse and they won last Friday. So all the same people came back. I mean, sometimes it's fun to get out. It's fun to sit in your home, but it's really fun to get out and do that. I just
You know, the city here has made it, the Downtown Business Association, and I think it's Economic Development Winnipeg have done a huge deal of getting, there's food vendors, there's food trucks around, there's beer vendors, there's drinks. They've got an area that's a little more family friendly, in a grassy area. It's off a lot. Like, they've done a really good job of making it a fun thing. The one thing that's been the biggest problem is that people have gone and said, it's hard to watch the game because everyone's having so much fun.
Yeah.
And
well, able to watch the game like that. I would not.
Yeah. And I can say from being in Maple Leaf Square for the 3 games between the Caps and the Leafs last year, it's a fun experience to be out there, to be with other fans, and have sort of a communal thing. It allows the event to actually watch the game because it's on a screen slapped up against the building, and it's not I mean, if you want to watch a game and it's the best viewpoint, it's sit at home and watch it on high def, and listen to Mike Emmerich and Mike Milbury and Pierre Maguire.
I mean, I watch him plenty of times without sound on, but I don't want to. When I'm out there with 10,000 people, I'm not going to be able to pay attention. In a bar, I could still pay better attention than that.
Yeah, I mean, I last year was I was in the press box, but I came out a couple times because my wife was for Game 6 of the Penguins Nashville was actually on Broadway there watching outside with a bunch of people because I brought her down just to see what a crazy environment it was, and I wanted to stay out there. I didn't want to go back to the press box. I was having more fun out there. It is such a even though it's just. And you could watch it with there, and they if they put the sound up and the TVs are, it's not about sitting there and like we do microanalyzing everything. It's about being part of the emotion and part of the the whole thing of it. And you really get a chance. Like, I was out there last year when Nashville's first goal was, I think, disallowed in that Penguins game, which was a big deal. And I was amazed at the reaction of the fans. It wasn't like, the reaction that fans would have been in Philadelphia would have been like, you would have had to call in the, Marines probably.
That disallowed goal won me $37 in my hockey pool.
Yeah. There you go. Right. So, I mean, so anyway, I thought it was great. But let's talk about Minnesota and let's talk about Fletcher now, because now the repercussions of this come into play. And Craig Leopold announced that they will not be renewing Fletcher's contract as GM, which is as close as Leopold has ever come to firing a GM. And he is fired in a way, but in a way he's not, because in a way he just he never fired. Remember, this is a guy who never fired Poyle in Nashville. Never fired anybody since in Minnesota. He's Fletcher's been there the whole time with him, pretty much, right?
I find it interesting though that they've and we've talked about Minnesota and the possibility of Fletcher being let go, because I mean, for all the success that he has had, and I think they've drafted pretty well and they've developed fairly well. They've got kids like Erickson, Akin, Greenway. There's some young players coming along. They never got past the second round. They've been good, they've been consistent, but they've never been really successful. I think that's the reason why. And maybe the fact that they spent a ton of money signing Parise and Suter years ago, and that really hasn't been successful in the window that they provided. Now they're in the it is, but
because actually, I mean, there's no reason it shouldn't have been successful. Those two players, they've both been hurt at very inopportune times.
Sure.
Injuries in the playoffs have destroyed the Wild every year. It's crazy. I mean, whether it's a goalie, whether it's Suter, whether it's Parise, whether it's Stahl, or it's like it always kills them, right? So that's a shame. And I think you're right, though. I think that this is a matter of Leopold said that they're a good team. They need to be a great team, right? And I think that's
there's another big factor too. Fletcher really bungled the Kaprizov situation, because like last year when I was in Pittsburgh for the Stanley Cup, I was with Mike Russo, and I told Russo, Kaprizov's not coming over, and Russo goes, "Oh no, Fletcher told me he is, and we just met with him and met with his agent and everything else." And I told him this just on in confidence. I was just like, Mike, from what I'm being told out of Russia, he's not coming. So, Russo could have done whatever he wanted with that information. Everybody said he's coming. He signed a 3-year deal, and to stay in the AHL. So he is eventually going to come to the NHL, not as a Minnesota Wild player, and will be a great player. And that will hurt. And I think that played into it. I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be a Panarin situation because he can wait until their rights expire and just go anywhere he wants. But what I'm surprised at is, they fire or they don't renew Fletcher's contract, but they keep Bruce Boudreau. So now Bruce Boudreau is in limbo until they decide on who the general manager is, and then once they've hired the new guy, he either decides whether he wants to keep Boudreau or not, or maybe Leopold says, I want to keep Boudreau, and the new GM is saddled with a coach that he might not want.
Yeah, that's a funny one because, I sit on the fence on this, but there's a lot of Bruce Boudreau playoff critics. And Boudreau's the kind of guy that, I wonder if he burns hot for a while and then he just fizzles out with a team, because he's had some horrible game 7 luck. Like his game 7 record is, eventually he's going to get his time. And I hope he does, because that's just unfortunate. But, I think he's been out coached too many times too. And if you're a new GM, why do you want to keep doing that? Now, I've always said this is
making the playoffs, Peter. That's the thing.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing. Like, I sit on the fence, right? Because he's not a bad coach.
No.
Like, he isn't, and he got a lot out of the Wild when Yo couldn't, right? And that's important to remember.
Just like he got a lot out of the Caps, and just like he got a lot out of the Ducks, but when it came to, the Ducks got to Game 7 of the Western Conference Final and lost the Blackhawks.
I mean, it's what can you really see? This is my thing. Like, a GM can put the players on the ice. The GM gives the coach the players, right? A coach gets the players ready. But when you get to a Game 7, it's the players. I mean, it comes down.
Yeah, there's not much you can do as coach. I agree.
Really can't. I mean, you can sit there. Boudreau, as we've all seen his inspiring, curse-laden banter in the locker room. I mean, he's like every other coach out there, and he's completely.
I'd bring him back. And
I think it's interesting that they didn't get rid of him right away. And I think that and Craig will probably, Leopold will probably look for a GM that's okay with Boudreau. That would be my guess, because. And that's not going to be hard to find, because a lot of GMs really like Bruce Boudreau. I mean, you have yourself there a serious coach in the NHL, and I have so hard to believe. I mean, you can't blame him for Suter and Parise getting hurt. Yeah. I mean, that's going back to Anaheim, look what happened to Anaheim this year. Okay, and when you think about it, he took Anaheim to all his Game 7s. Sometimes with teams maybe that weren't even good enough, that shouldn't have even been good enough to get to that point at times, I think. I mean, I'm not saying that this Anaheim Ducks team was, this Anaheim Ducks team obviously has defensive deficiencies. They've lost players, like you pointed out, Russ, perfectly the other day. They may have hit their gap as to how much you can trade away potential on defense. Yeah. But at the same time, Boudreau might have been a big part of them getting as far as they got in those years. And
he may have been.
And it's so hard to tell, and you can't necessarily for him to actually win the Game 7 and get them over the top. They can't do it. He just can't do it. So I don't know if you're a GM, how you can possibly blame a coach for that.
No, and Bruce Boudreau just may. I mean, like I said, it could be luck. He just may have this weird curse hanging over his head in the playoffs for no other reason than that's just the probability of a coin flip in a Game 7 that hasn't gone his way. Yeah. And it's got nothing to do with him other than being at the wrong place at the wrong time or the wrong situation.
Not to dump on Chuck Fletcher, but if he had a better cap situation, Boudreau would have had at least 1 or 2 more players depth-wise in the playoffs. And that's not his fault.
And they're starting to feel that pinch. But here's the other thing, like the reason why you may not fire Boudreau is, and if you're the new GM, you don't, maybe Leopold gives you to say, okay, you're running this, you might want to bring in your coach, that's fine. But if you're the other GM, take pause, because you need to understand exactly what we just talked about. But Boudreau's a free fire for you because he's not your guy. You get to can him and bring in your guy. You get a free fire, because if you bring in your guy and it doesn't work out, then the heat goes up immediately, right?
Right.
Well, I mean, the one thing regarding the cap, you're going to have a situation where maybe Fletcher wasn't willing to trade one of those defensemen. Remember, we thought they were going to lose a defenseman when it came to expansion. They have Brodin at over $4 million. They ended up trading Scandella to Buffalo, but they have Brodin, they have Spurgeon, they have Suter. I mean, they have a lot of high-paid defensemen. And, maybe you can't carry that many high-paid defensemen along with the number of forwards they're paying over $5 million. So maybe they have to make some tough decisions and pare down that roster and let some young players come in, and that might be the direction that they have to go.
And they started doing that even in the playoffs, right? I mean, they really did. When you look at who they had in, guys like Kunin, right, and Dune, and then of course Greenway, comes in. I mean, they're doing things. They're adding these young players. Eriksson Ek, I mean, I was reading our writer Dan Wallace wrote a really great article about all this for the Wild, and talks about Eriksson Ek's more beginning to like be more of a part of the team, more part of the offense. I think that this is they really, and it's interesting that Boudreau was allowed to do that. Like Fletcher didn't say anything about oh, you shouldn't be bringing these guys in, even though Fletcher knows his job's at stake. They
really had no choice with the injuries they had,
of course, because of the injuries. But he's still and some of them showed pretty strongly. Some of them did pretty good job. When I heard about this and possibility of Boudreau going, another person mentioned to me, the idea of Scott Stevens, possibly in this situation because he is a Minnesota guy. Took time off to be with his family to go there. He's been living in that area. That's something that and he's also very popular there. So I think that could be an interesting.
Well, he'll show people how to legally hit because he was on the NHL Network the other day, actually showing you what you could get away with legally in a hit. And I laughed about it. We talked about it on the podcast. If nothing else, he will teach the defenseman that.
That's awesome.
Well, and just before we move on, it's like, I mean, what'll be interesting is whether the GM candidate for Minnesota comes from that list that everybody thought was going to go to Carolina, or whether it's somebody internal. Is it going to be the Fentons and the Julien Brisebois and the Pat Verbeeks and those names that we heard, or is it
Minnesota will get one of those guys? They're probably not going to get an analytics guy, straight analytics guy. They'll get one of the well-rounded guys.
Yeah,
I would think.
I agree with that, Russ. And I also think to that point, Mike, as the clock ticks in Carolina and then you see that Bill Peters goes, this is exactly why you make this move now. So you can get a jump on who they're going to go after.
Right. And I've heard they're already going to talk to some of the same people. And I think that what is interesting here now is does Dundon down in Carolina look at Fletcher? Like, I mean, Fletcher has had a seriously pretty positive career, actually, as a GM.
Look at Fletcher. Fletcher's not accepting that salary.
Not that salary, but remember the salary he was talking to was really being offered to assistant GMs and things like that. So perhaps in his, currently assistant GMs, when you're bringing in Fletcher, and
but do you
really the salary goes up.
Well, do you really think that Chuck Fletcher is going to take a job where his power is usurped by Dundon? Because right now, that's what it sounds like the position is. It's going to be somebody who has to check with Dundon every time he opens up a box of paper clips.
But
I don't know,
look, Mark Chipman was like that too, not to the degree that we've seen Dundon, but at the Jets' second trade deadline. So it was the year after they signed Olli Jokinen, and he went down and they talked about bringing a center in. And, Chevy said in his post-trade identity thing, we had options laid out. We reviewed them with ownership, and Mark Chipman was in the room. We don't know what his role was, but he was there, and he's fairly hands-on. And some owners are like that, and that's okay. It's just we're all thinking the worst of Dundon, right? Right, and maybe he's a guy who says, before you do this, I want to ask some questions, and that's all he wants to do. Yeah. Is he going to be like that? I don't know. We don't know yet, right? We're still waiting to find out.
I think more the questions, Peter. I do.
I agree.
But Leopold is not the least involved owner either. Okay, so you're coming from a situation where you have a guy who also, does have a sense, a pretty, even though he's not a hockey guy, Craig Leopold also.
But I never got the sense, and you would have a better idea than me, but I never got the sense that Leopold really stood in the way of a lot of what Fletcher wanted to do.
No.
I think Carolina, it would be a different situation.
He doesn't, but I think I do get the sense that he does tell them, he did give Fletcher, what the direction that an owner would give you, like, oh, let's not go crazy this deadline because we went, let's not do this. Let's definitely get involved in this. Let's definitely try to get this player. I mean, remember when Forsberg was picked up by Nashville? I do think that was a big part of Leopold. I don't think that was a Poile move at the time.
No.
But it was at the same time, I think that, it was something that, if his GM disagrees with him, he will definitely listen to them, maybe more than Dundon. But it's hard to tell. It's hard to tell. We don't know yet.
If you look at Calgary. Calgary has fired a coach and hired a coach faster than Carolina could fire a coach, fire a GM, and replace either one of them.
Yeah, right.
And Bradshaw Living admitted in the press availability that he let go of Gulletson specifically to hire Peters.
Yeah,
so
Peters
that's
there. He's from suburban Calgary, right? I mean, that's where he's from. That makes total sense that he would want to go back there.
But the idea is, there's one thing about sort of like, having this, great search, right? But you can tell when a search is going too long, and it's going too long.
Oh, yeah.
They are starting to get hurt in the marketplace, like Peter said.
Yeah,
I think it's still going on. But I think
you nailed it.
I think he's gone underground pretty severely.
But they're losing in the marketplace to the other team.
I mean, who's been hired so far? I mean, who have they lost? At this point, nobody's been hired.
They lost their coach. They did.
Well, they lost their coach, but I think that was coming anyway. And I think that, and I think that they told him that. And I think Peters said as much in the press conference today. A new GM's going to bring in his new guy.
In fact, that's when
he left.
They've lost 4 general manager candidates who told them they're not interested in the job. That's what they lost.
That too.
Yeah. Like I said before, I buy a couple of them. I don't buy a couple of them as well. So that's
the issue is exactly as Russ says. They've fallen behind, and if Dundon is taking sort of a corporate approach, what's his plan? Because you don't do these things without having a plan. And you're not. And what's your plan B? What's your plan C? What's your plan D? And he's like, he could still be on plan A for all we know, but plan A isn't really working if this is what plan A is. Because, and correct me if I'm wrong, I can't remember the last time we saw a fired GM, or in this case, removed GM, as it is with Francis, take this long to go through the process. I can't recall it being this long.
No,
and
you're right.
And more than likely, since we're at the end of April and early May, and the draft is in less than 2 months, you're probably going to have the scouting and drafting, scouting and management set up, unless you're going to have a general manager coming in like at the 11th hour. Ron Francis is probably still going to be doing their draft.
Don Waddell. Don Waddell's going to do everything. That's what I've been told. And Don Waddell is the guy who's taken over all that organizing aspect, and the theory there.
Goes to what I said the other day, Peter. What's going to happen? And Don Waddell is taking over those duties, and they are going to hire a coach / player personnel guy like the NFL.
They're going to hire another GM, but if they don't get one in time for the draft, it'll be Don Waddell's thing. So I
got 2 words for you: Patrick Steffen.
Well, listen, I mean, Waddell also, he made like Brian Little. I mean, there are some pretty good picks he's made too.
Actually, to be fair, if you look up Atlanta's drafting, it really is the worst that's ever happened in the NHL. It's bad.
Now let's just
in that time period, it was the worst.
Okay, yeah.
Let's move on to this, because I want to tip the hat not only to Joe Sakic for making the best trade of the year, but also to have the good sense that right after the Avalanche get eliminated, he extends Jared Bednar, who, we criticize because he had the worst year of any team in history. But I think Sakic realized that it wasn't Bednar. It was the fact that the team was just a train wreck last year.
Yeah.
And they turned it around. They added youngsters. They made the Duchesne deal. I think they gave a better than expected tussle against Nashville.
Yeah.
And they lost last night, but that team, under Bednar, made a lot of progress, and that was a good job by Sakic doing that.
Bednar is a great coach, and to be honest, he was pretty sought after when Colorado hired him. I mean, there were other teams that were interested in him, and if they did let him go, he would be sought after again immediately, even if his season wasn't as great as it really was. But it was really, I don't think a lot of people blamed him. I mean, he really had to put together the Patrick Waugh puzzle best he could, right? And that was impossible the first year. So, yeah, but I thought I was kind of surprised only 1 year, to be honest. I really thought it should have been more. I thought a 1 year extension on top. So now he has 2 years because he's got this year and another year. 1 year extension really isn't much of it's not much of an endorsement. I mean, it's okay, but it's not like, it's not like you're talking about basically you're just saying you're taking the pressure off this year, so the people aren't going to say is he going to sign or not. But that's all.
Coming off the year that he came last year, I mean, everybody wanted him, wanted him lined up for a firing squad after last year. They thought it was all his fault, and the turnaround, I think he gets enough of a credit for it that they're like, okay, let's give him an extra year. Let's see where this club goes next year. I mean, it's still an evaluation process, but I think they deserve a tip of the cap for just doing that, because otherwise he'd be entering the final year of the deal, and if he has another good year, then you're dealing with a free agent coach basically.
Yeah. No, it's all very true. But we got a lot else to move on to. Let's get on to Philly for a second, because Philly is done as well.
Are you sure?
Yeah, and I you know what, that was a strange, crazy game yesterday. And just a crazy series. The fact that they won Game 5 was shocking in and of itself. But it really was like they Pittsburgh did have the classic Game 5 thing, that when you're up 3-1, that you come home and that's where teams can blow. If
they said it themselves. It's a hard game to win,
Yeah, and it's funny, whenever you look at a team that comes back from 3-1, you always have to go back to Game 5, because that's usually the game that the team that blew it really blew it. Like that's usually the game where they just didn't show up, and that was what Pittsburgh did, and to a degree, that's what Boston did in the Toronto series. That's where the team doesn't completely show up, and I'm not saying totally. We'll get to that in a second, Mike. But I think that there is something. I mean, Couturier's effort with a partially torn MCL is just
amazing,
astonishing. A 5-point game yesterday. The winning goal on Friday.
In the locker room during his interview, he actually was having trouble sort of like hypothesizing, because I think he was in so much pain.
It's amazing. I mean, and we all knew what it was. We all had a feeling of what it was, and yet we kept being told by players that he's going to try to play.
Yeah.
And you were just astonished. We were all astonished. I was astonished he didn't play in Game 4. To be honest, but wasn't surprised at all when he came out in Game 5 and 6, and literally there were a couple moments though that there's a lot of pressure on Hackstall right now in Philly, I think, because of this.
I'll tell you why there's pressure on him, Mac.
Yeah.
There's a couple things. So, like, I saw a headline from NHL.com, which I felt was 100% wrong. They said, the Flyers, didn't advance in the playoffs because of injuries. Really, injuries are not not the reason they didn't do it. For one thing, we know that they didn't have a lot of depth, and that's because they're a building team. But they did play an injured goalie when they could have played Peter Mrazek. That was a decision by the coach to push him aside. And then they did finally have a healthy Michael Neuvirth. So it's not like injuries deterred them from winning yesterday. It didn't. What happened was Pittsburgh comes in waves, and the Flyers could hold them back for only so long. And that ridiculous call that should have happened to Letang right in front of the ref with Couturier didn't happen. And the will was taken out of him literally 10 seconds later. Boom, goal, another goal by Jake Gensel, 2 goals in 10 seconds, 4 goals in a row. And that's, and that was the game. And I'm not blaming the refereeing either. I'm just saying that was a bad call. But you could tell the Flyers were holding on for all they could, and that was when they couldn't hold on any longer.
And there's an amazing thing that happened this year against the Penguins, where the Flyers gave up goals in bunches, like an incredible.
18-6 in that series, in those home games, 18-6 they were outscored. So yeah, he's probably frozen for the moment. But when you get outscored 18-6. It's a bad situation.
I think the problem is, and not only did Hackstall play the injured goalie, he didn't have a goalie. He had no confidence in Mrazek. And Neuvirth, I mean, how healthy was he, Russ? I mean,
he got through 30 minutes of the game before, and a whole game there when there was an extreme amount of activity in that game. So he was healthy enough, actually.
But we know Brian Elliott was limited.
But given the goalie situation, the other thing I think where some criticism, and it's been around for a while with Flyers fans about Hackstall, is don't you develop a strategy to help the situation between the pipes and try and eliminate shots rather than hoping the goalie just steps up? Don't you try and adjust something? What's that?
He didn't have the horses to do that. There was no supreme shot blockers on that team. You could only have Provorov.
But not even shot blockers. How you play the puck, the stuff, how you isolate out.
Here, take an example. He already had Provorov, who was really compromised with his shoulder, so he did all he could in that game.
Yeah, that's right. He was basically playing with one noodle.
He was playing with one. Gostisbehere had a horrible series and was playing horribly in that game. Robert Hagg is maybe a guy you could use for that, but he's a rookie. Michael Gudas single-handedly had 2 of the worst plays of the season to sort of hand Pittsburgh the opportunity to win that game when they were up 2 goals. Like, just exactly who are you counting on, Peter? That's my point.
Yeah. And again, I took a, as the writing was on the wall yesterday, you sort of take a look at the Philly roster and stuff, and you wonder, they're hamstrung on the McDonald contract, but there's a lot there with that team. But there's about 3 moves that need to be made to get them to the point where they can go into a first round, healthy, every team assuming healthy, that they can start making some noise. They've got to deal with the goalie. They've got to figure out what the depth and the role of the defense is going to be. And they've got to find a way to deal with something in the bottom 6 that makes sense from a role type of line, like whether it may make a scoring line, a checking line, or whatever it is. But Hackstall's got to be able to rely on it and keep drawing to it. And I just don't see trust in it.
Peter, I think the problem is that they had $12 million in dead money between Valerie Filppula, Jiri Lehtera, and Matt Reed. That Russ, I think all 3 of them are free agents, or does Lehtera have another year?
Yes, they all 3 are free agents.
Okay, so they really have to go out now. Maybe they're going to use that money to re-sign Wayne Simmons. They do have youngsters coming in that organization. I think Morgan Frost is going to be in NHL probably in, I'd say, 2 years. Same thing for Carter Hart. So they have to find a way to bridge the gap, not only in goal, but they have to bridge the gap at forward too, because I don't think they're going to go out and sign somebody for 8 years, but if they can make a trade for somebody who's got a couple years left in the contract, that might be the way to go. But I think they need to add like 2 or 3 players, and then I think they can give Pittsburgh a run for their money. But that team, Pittsburgh,
Pittsburgh, you can't overreact to what happened with your team when you're playing a team that is very likely to come out of the East again. And so that's, sorry, Tampa fans, but until Tampa wins it, they still look like the team that's going to come out of the East. And so
I think Tampa can do it.
Oh, yeah, nobody says they can't, Mike. But until they do, Pittsburgh's right there. So if I'm evaluating the Flyers, I can't over-evaluate them based on what happened to the best team in the East, a team that's won 2 cups in a row. However, look, Sam Morin's healthy again. They'll look at him in the playoffs. They'll see where he's at. If they feel like he can play with them next year, then he'll be in, and maybe they'll trade Radko Gudas because he'll essentially take over the Radko Gudas role if he can do that. Bottom 6 guys, there's Albe Cabell, there's Mike Vecchione. They'll look at those guys in the playoffs. If none of them stand out, then they will have to make some short-term signings until their guys are here. That's where they're at. There's nothing else that's going to drastically change for this franchise because Ron Hextall is not going to saddle himself with bad contracts. So he might still take another contract like he did with Filppula, like he did with Lehtera, if he gets something good out of it. But they're almost at the point where I don't think draft picks are the way they're going anymore, but young talent is. So I think that's where they're at.
I think most importantly in terms of maybe trading for somebody short term is going to be in goal because Brian Elliott, I'm sorry, you move on from him if you can. Mrazek, they probably won't even qualify him. Maybe there's a trade out there for a Jake Allen or somebody like that who's under contract for 2 or 3 more years, who they can go with for a little while until Hart is ready. But I think that's the direction they have to go.
It is, but after that, it's not like there's a ton they can do other than hope that next year Oscar Lindblom with this experience, can really step up. Jordan Wheel, they'll have to make a decision on. He's been hot and cold. Taylor Lear is another guy that who knows. Scott Lawton did okay. He'll be back. So they are going to have some piecemealing to do, but that's it. They're not going to go crazy. Would they trade one of their blue chip guys if they got like a 25-year-old guy who's not going to re-sign with the team? Yeah, maybe and I'm getting at like a Hannafin type guy. If something like that became available, they probably would look at it. But beyond that, they're not doing anything else big.
Well, okay, let's touch on the two games tonight. Let's start with Columbus and Washington. I mean, Columbus, I think, has blown a ridiculous opportunity here, winning the first two games in Washington. Washington comes back and wins the two in Columbus, and then wins Game 5 in OT. I know that Tortorella is doing everything he possibly can to take the focus away off of his team and to put it on himself with his, we choked, or whatever the comment was. We laid an egg, right? And he basically, he took the ire of the media for not giving him anything other than we laid an egg. And I guess that's a good tactic if you want to keep the heat off of your young club. But I think there's enough heat out there because they've blown an opportunity here. They had Washington they had them ready for the taking, and they let them off the hook. And now I think Washington has got the advantage in this series.
Right now I'm doing well with our picks. Like, I'm 5-2, and I did pick Columbus, but I have to tell you, in all honesty, Columbus gave Washington life. And I see a different Washington team now because they were on the brink of getting eliminated again. And you could tell they were going down that path. And even a guy like Backstrom wasn't playing great. And Holtby had just gotten back in there, so he could have been a little shaky. Now, all of a sudden, everything's solidified because they got that chance. They got that win. I would be surprised now if Columbus can wrestle away this series. I don't think they can anymore. But we'll see.
I don't know, guys. I mean, I feel like Columbus, what were they? The shots were like 13-0 last game in the third period for a while there by Columbus. They were just pouring it on. I mean, Holtby has been incredible. Let's just and the fact is the first two games were overtime games. The last game was overtime. I mean, it's like the first two games, where Washington hasn't played horribly in, the fact is, like, they have not been terrible in this series. In some ways, this Washington team looks like they might be better.
But Columbus was carrying the play, and they had a chance to step on their throat a little bit.
They did. But at the same time, you're also trying to step on the throat of a really experienced playoff team, like a team that has been through stuff before.
But a team that has a lot of holes, Zach. And the one thing is, like, for all the times I've criticized Sergei Bobrovsky in the playoffs for not coming up big, in that overtime, he robbed blind Ovechkin. He robbed John Carlson in deep. I mean, he made 3 unbelievable saves in overtime, and there was very little offense from the Blue Jackets in OT. So, I mean, like I said, I think they had a chance, and they completely blown it. Now, maybe they can come back and win it in 7. That's what I predicted, but I think they've blown it. I predicted
too, but I don't feel good about it. I just look at Bobrovsky's save percentage. It's .912. That's like hovering on not good. Like, that's in the playoffs, that's not very good. And so, like, again, you have now given an experienced team a chance to close you out when you were sort of in the position where you could have closed it out, but they couldn't win a home game. Nobody could win a home game for a while. It's a bad spot for Columbus. And I think that what Tortorella, besides deflecting, he was desperate. He was, because I think even he could sense he's losing this series. Losing the
really good. I mean, it's a really good point. It's a really tough series. Honestly, both of these teams are going to give Pittsburgh. Either of these teams are going to give Pittsburgh a real run for them.
Oh, absolutely.
I picked Pittsburgh. I picked Pittsburgh now in all the 9 straight series that they have won in the playoffs. I have predicted Pittsburgh to win. But in the next one, I'm not so sure. Like, I really am not, because it's just the stuff I saw, and that stuff I saw in that Flyers series. If they get, because if you put Holtby or Bobrovsky on the Flyers in that series, I don't know where we are right now. Like, I honestly don't, because that was something.
I think the only reason for hesitancy of picking the Penguins against either the Caps or the Blue Jackets is if we don't know the severity of Malkin's injury. If it's something serious, then I think that it's a pick 'em. But if Malkin is anywhere close to being healthy, they will kick either one of those teams' rear ends.
No, but I totally disagree. We'll get to that,
of course.
Closer
than that, Mike. I think there'll be something there. There's an interesting tweet out there that someone retweeted to me that I got to tell you. Joe Haggerty out of Boston said it's time for Rick Nash to step up and deliver more than chances and close calls and deliver some offense. And somebody tweeted that right in front of me, and it's like Groundhog Day. Like, we've talked about it a million times on this show. This is where you're at with Rick Nash, no matter where you bring him to anymore.
And it's amazing because he's given every possibility now. Like, he's played what he was, the guy who had to score. He's played where he was the guy who didn't have to score. He's playing in a situation now where the pressure's not on him, where the pressure is on him. He's on a third line. He's on a second line. He's playing just the penalty kill, whatever. I mean, it's just completely like crazy. And at the same time, it comes back to the fact that his point production in the playoffs is horrendous. And
I believe I saw a graphic in Game 5 that he is leading the Bruins in shots on goal more than Pasternak, more than Marchand, which is surprising.
That's nothing new either, though. I mean, for the Rangers, am I wrong about that, Russ? Didn't he lead the Rangers? He led the Rangers in shots on goal a lot.
He wasn't ever leading the Rangers in shots, but I think he's taking more shots.
He doesn't take. Yeah. He takes a lot of not super crazy good shots, I must say. Like, I mean, you know, he takes a lot of hitting the emblem type wrist shots. You know, like
you'll get 2 plays a game where Nash will take the puck himself and get to the net and have a real good scoring chance. And if he doesn't bury one of those, that's it for him for the game, other than playing good defense, you know.
Well, the other interesting note as we transition to Bruins Leafs is that Tuukka Rask apparently has guaranteed a win in Game 6. I didn't realize that he was follically challenged and wore number 11 like somebody did.
Are we getting a little tired of guarantees this year? I mean,
we're getting tired of guarantees.
I mean, guarantees this year feel like they're so overused. I mean, that was something that was really rare in the past, and I think because you know why it was rare in the past, by the way? It was rare in the past because it is chalkboard material. Like, it is something that the other team, I mean, Messier did it. And what was great about Messier doing it and winning it and all that stuff was because when you say that, you actually do give your opponent more motivation. And that's why you don't say it.
I guarantee that in an hour I will be eating a chicken sandwich. That's the best guarantee I can give you right now.
That was like even money. I just went and looked. Bodog had that as even money. I mean, come on.
I know. And my wife just told me, you know, just texted me on the way home. She was stopping at my son and going by Chick-fil-A. And did I want a chicken sandwich? And I said yes. So I will too be eating a chicken sandwich right after the show.
Now, as in regards to Game 6, I mean, I wrote today, and you know, again, sometimes history means absolutely nothing. Sometimes it's a indicator of things to come. And you know, the Leafs were in the same situation in 2013. They were down 3-1 going to Boston, and the similar thing happened where James Reimer stood on his head in Game 5 and won the game. Made, I think, 18 saves in the third period. Freddie Anderson made 19 saves. They were after getting up 4-1. Everybody was echoing Game 7 of 2013 because it looked like the Leafs were going to blow the lead and give it back to them, and they held on for dear life. You know, Game 6 here, I think it's going to be a tight game. I think Boston's going to try to shut them down like they did in Game 4. And if they do that, then it's going to be basically a 1-goal game. The Leafs are going to try to open it up because that's the way that they can win, but they'll have to get Freddie Anderson to make 40 to 45 saves to be able to force a Game 7. I picked the Bruins in 7, so that means I have to pick the Leafs tonight. But I you know, if the Bruins get off to a quick start, then it might be tough for them.
Do the Bruins actually have to? I mean, if the Bruins score 40, if they take 45 shots, that's really not shutting it down. You know, like that to me is like if they play if they want to play that kind of game against the Maple Leafs, they're not really smart. I mean, that's like, to me, that's not the game they should be playing.
Well, that's shutting it down for the Leafs based on the defense that they play because, you know, I mean, their defense is Frederik Anderson. That's what it basically is.
Oh, yeah. But I think I mean, we are due for Austin Matthews to have a good game. Like he's had good games, but we're due for him to have one of his games. You know, like we haven't seen it.
And it's all dependent on Mike Babcock being able to line change and get him away from Bergeron and get him away from Chara and McAvoy. And then in Game 5, he had an assist on the opening goal, and it was when Torrey Krug and Adam McQuaid were on the ice. It was one of the only times that he wasn't on the ice against Chara and McAvoy. They have shut him down, and playing against Bergeron, he's got to be cognizant of playing defensively because those guys are witches. They just score whatever they want.
But Kadri was a big factor in that game, and he'll be a big factor tonight too. I think. I mean, that was something that enables you not to quite do that. Like you can't completely shut if you go and you try to shut down. You know, you try to shut down Matthews, and like a guy twice his age in Chara tries to take him down, which he has. You know, a couple times. He's done a pretty good job. You still got to dealing with Kadri. Kadri opens up a lot of space for Nylander and other players. Like he really does. He really creates a lot of good plays for them, and I really felt like that Kadri's loss of 3 games was huge, you know, and bigger than I thought it was. I mean,
but you're right. They'll try to match him up against Bergeron. It's going to be Marleau, Kadri, and Marner probably matching up against the Bergeron line. Yeah. And the little side story will be how will Brad Marchand cheap shot Mitch Marner because he's done it the entire series. He did it in Game 5. He he skated past him and shoved him in the back of the head while he was prone on the ice. And I asked Marner, I said, says, how do you deal with the, how do you maintain your composure against guys like Marchand who do all this stuff after the whistle? And he basically said, I just laugh. It's funny. I don't think it's funny when a guy is pile driving your head into the ice, but I guess that's the best way to deal with
him, though. That is the way to deal with a guy like Marchand. I mean, that is a mature answer from Marner for sure, because that.
Everybody got muted there for a second. That was weird. You're muted,
Wow, that was weird.
Yeah, everybody got muted.
All mute. That's just.
I was going to say to the point about the Leafs and showing up. The one guy that has to continue, if the Leafs want to have any chance of winning this game, is Freddie Anderson needs to still keep being Freddie Anderson. Like that's been the one consistent thing, and it doesn't matter what the score's been. The guy's played lights out every game.
Yeah.
And he's got to keep doing that if the Leafs want to have any chance.
Peter, in the 2 wins that they've had, he's made 37 saves in the third period.
Yeah.
So now he may be one of these goaltenders who thrives on work, because Game 4, which was I think the key game of the series, he only faced 21 shots, but he got beaten 3 times. So maybe he needs to be busy, but all I can say is he will be busy based on the way the Leafs play defense sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Russ, you're muted. I don't know. Can you not unmute yourself? Interesting. I don't know.
Does he see?
I'm trying. Yeah, I see he's muted. I'm sure. I'm trying to. I don't know. It's weird. Anyway, so yeah, I think Anderson might be that kind of goalie, and that's what we've seen. And I really it's surprising, because obviously in Anaheim it was the opposite situation, right, where you hardly get any shots on you. So we really didn't see Anderson in a situation like this, but he has with Toronto. He's been better than I thought he'd be with it in situations for a long time now. That where he has been pounded with shots. Like this has been the thing in Toronto. It hasn't, the Leafs give up a ton of shots all the time. It's not just this series. It's all the time, right? So he's been really good with that.
And I really think that that's going to be the key going forward with the Leafs. Even past this year, is you're going to have to at some point be able to play defense good enough where you don't allow 40 shots, and you have to have your goaltender carry you. You have to be able to develop a two-way game. And right now, the only way the Leafs can win this series, they did it in Game 5 and they did it in Game 3. They were throwing stretch passes to try to weaken the Bruins' defense, to try to catch them. And it worked a little bit. In other games, they were able to neutralize that. If that's the only way the Leafs can win, is to continue to do these long bomb passes from Gardner and Riley. And if they succeed at that tonight, though, we'll force a Game 7, and then we'll see.
That kind of play that's a play that you can adjust to, and it can't be a solution going forward. And again, Mike, I don't disagree with you. All I was going to say is that illustrates the fact that the Leafs have a glaring talent deficiency on the blue line.
Yeah.
And this is going to be a story for them continuing on. And it doesn't matter if Austin Matthews literally turns into Jesus. It's not going to change some of the problems for the Leafs if they don't address that issue on their blue line. I mean, Ron Hainsey is playing an ungodly amount of minutes for a 38-year-old. I mean, yes. I made a tweet on Saturday where I said, I look forward to 2028 when 48-year-old Ron Hainsey is rolled out for 22 minutes a night by Mike Babcock. Because
it's amazing.
It's unreal,
and he's doing an incredible job too. Like I have to say, like he's doing an unbelievable job with it. Like he really is. Like just last year, I wasn't sure he could do it with Pittsburgh in the playoffs, and he's done it all year this year. The
amazing thing is that the Leafs were shorthanded for most of the end of the second period and early third period, and Ron Hainsey, during a time span where they were shorthanded 5-on-3 for 1 minute and 33 seconds, was on for 3 minutes and 2 seconds straight. And that's honestly, I understand why Babcock is doing it, because he knows there are certain defensemen on his team, Jake Gardner, who cannot penalty kill. And guys like Polak and Zaitsev and Hainsey, that's their role. But honestly, he's going to drop at some point. I think his play dropped off in the second half because he was overused so much. So he is what he is, and he's done pretty well. But I think the point is, Russ and Peter. One thing. Games, if the Leafs do get to Game 7, Leo Komarov, who Babcock is a big fan of, he's a veteran guy, They will find a way to get him in the lineup if he's 100% healthy. Babcock's been impressed with his young guys, with Kapanen, with Andreas Janssen. I was talking to another reporter today. We were looking through the roster. The guy that he might scratch is William Nylander, because William Nylander has been demoted to the fourth line. And if that happens,
all right. So
watch out.
Russ has some breaking news. Russ, what's going on?
So here's the breaking news. I was listening to Greg Wyshynski's ESPN podcast because he had Tom Dundon on.
Hey, man. Good.
I know.
I'm just kidding. I'm totally kidding. That was for Tom Dundon.
I know, but it was relative for the show. And so here's what I took out of it. I was gleaning some stuff. Right now, he's still talking about the non-traditional market. And right now he's saying, yes, he did all the exit interviews because he needs to know what's going on with the team and to know what direction they're going and everything else. And if he's wrong, maybe in time that'll prove out and he'll change it. He said that. And he also said that he's still looking for like undervalued, marketed players, in other words, cheaper players, and give them a chance, sort of like what Vegas did. But if that doesn't work out, maybe he'll have to change the plan and go to, higher cost players. So right now, basically the gist that I got, and I didn't get to hear the whole thing, but I heard a fair amount. The gist is he is sticking to his plan. For people that don't believe that he can do this job, he believes he can. I got to tell you, Eck, my personal feeling is he is sticking to this like he's guaranteeing himself that he's right. And we've seen this happen in a lot of ways in a lot of sports. Just because you're a successful businessman, it does not mean you'll be a success in sports. And I think he really needs someone by his side, and he doesn't have it.
Yeah.
No, Russ, we've talked about this a few times, and I just said in our little chat here, like, it's the PCS model. He's going to rely on Eric Tulsky's team to keep him above water or treading water. And the one thing you don't do when you do this is you don't announce it. You don't say to all your competitors, I'm going to look for undervalued guys. And if he thinks that's what Vegas,
that's a fair point. That's a really good
point.
If he thinks that Vegas looked for undervalued guys and that's how they built that team.
Because when you put a team together, you're like, okay, this is the island, this is the toys.
They put together a team of undervalued guys because the other teams that gave them up didn't value them.
I will tell you this right now. I will virtually guarantee this for the offseason. Goodbye, Noah Hannafin, because they've signed Pesci, they've signed Slavin, they have Falk under contract, making them around 4.3 million for 2 more years. There's no way that this guy, who's now sounds like he's a penny pincher, is going to sign another defenseman when they need offense.
He's not a penny pincher.
He should sell them. Then Lou Lamoriello should be in Dundon's ear selling them undervalued Jake Gardner.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. No, the thing is, look,
he should call him every day. Send him chocolates, Mike.
Not a penny pincher. He's not a penny pincher. He's looking for values. I get it. I look for value every day of the week. I do.
Yeah, me too. I don't fault him for it, but you don't announce this to the world. And I think
Ed would agree with this. I think because he is not in the hockey world, he doesn't have hockey friends, and maybe even Ron Francis at this point is not his best friend. He needs a Scotty Bowman type where he could call somebody and just bounce things off of them, who has dealt with this for like 10 or 15 years, not based on analytics, just based on, hey, I've lived it, and these are different things that I've gone through, and I can help you with life.
That is Don Waddell in his mind.
Yeah, but that one's not been successful enough for that. That's
Mike Gillis. Mike Gillis.
No, he does need a Mike Gillis. Like, I love the idea of that, but Gillis won't come cheap. You know what he needs? He needs a player management whisperer in his ear. He needs like a Cliff Fletcher, someone who he can keep arm's length away from the operations. Cliff, this is what I'm thinking of. How do you feel about that? Right. You pay him, give him $500,000 a year to talk on the phone twice a week. And I think Cliff Fletcher's an ideal guy for him.
Will he admit that he needs that at some point? That's going to be the big question, because he's still very confident, and I don't blame him because he's a billionaire. But again, I've watched and covered sports my entire life, And there's nothing more humbling than taking over a sports franchise because you think you understand business and sports, and then after a few years realize you don't really understand business and sports. Sports business is completely different than regular business.
It definitely is. It definitely is. He needs somebody out of that Rich Winter program, right?
Yeah. But he cannot go and shop for players at Dollar Tree. It doesn't work.
Yeah, it doesn't work.
No, but like as an example, like if Teravainen were out on the open market, that would probably be a player he'd be willing to give a chance on. Now he is on his team, just because there's some positive things with Teuvo Teravainen, right? So, but again, I think the problem with that is if you get 5 guys like that on the open market, right, and you bring them in, probably 2 are going to pan out.
Yeah, you're probably right.
But it's a fascinating situation. You have to admit it. It is.
It is. It's totally fascinating. I'm just curious, like, what other GMs aren't trying to find undervalued guys? Like,
no, you're right.
Thinking he's going to be the only one out there.
Yeah, totally agree.
Like, and it's a noble pursuit. Congratulations and good luck. And I want to watch this because it's going to be absolutely fascinating.
I'm not rooting against them.
No, it's just. Aren't they all trying to find the one player that a certain team just doesn't really believe in anymore and stuff? I think they're all trying to do that.
Yeah, that's why the Rangers traded for guys like Spooner and Nemestikov. Yeah.
This is hockey Moneyball. That's what he's looking at.
That's what it is. Yeah.
And I'm sorry, like I'm a skeptic until I see it work. It didn't work in Florida. And I don't know if it's going to work anywhere else. Now, maybe he's willing to give Tulsky some control. Maybe Tulsky is the next general manager. You never know.
Maybe.
Yeah. I don't think it's not working. I just think that with the way our hockey organizations work, these are parallel resources that a team uses. Your scouting staff and your analytics staff, and you combine the two, and somehow you have to have a coach who's open enough to take all that information in and their training and all these different things that they've gone through. And you got to remember, the guys who come through Hockey Canada on the coaching, some of the stuff that's available to them through the Hockey Canada coaching programs and what's there it's astounding levels of intricacies that they can, and they learn that, right? And then you've got to deconstruct. Like,
let's be fair about something.
Is going to get hard. What's that?
Let's be fair about something. I used to have to do exit interviews and hiring. You probably have done that too. If you know that this guy's the owner and you're doing an exit interview with him, how honest do you think some of these players are going to be with him? Not very.
No.
Not very honest.
No. And what if you're a free agent after next year?
Right.
Yeah. No,
right?
I mean, it's going to be an evolving situation. We need to get out of here. Unfortunately, guys, we're running out of time. But
that's okay.
It's going to be a very evolving situation, and I'm getting a lot of texts too. There's a lot of stuff breaking around right now about these different GM jobs.
Sure.
And Minnesota might be quick in the whole thing. Might be a lot quicker than Carolina. Well, it'll definitely be quicker than Carolina, but we'll see. We'll see where it goes from here.
I would say that's a good bet.
Enjoy the games. We hope everyone is safe in Toronto, and enjoy the games tonight. Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. We will talk to you tomorrow. Probably tomorrow we should get into the Western Conference playoffs. Talk to you soon, guys. See you.